let me just share my screen and give you an idea of what the lab activity is gonna look like. Just give me a sec. I believe you guys can see my screen. If not, just let me know. All right, perfect. So for the lab activity, today's lab activity is not going to be very difficult. It's essentially what we've learned throughout the first lecture. You'll just be doing some small tasks based on that. It's more about group engagement, you guys discussing all the answers and kind of figuring out for yourself what for example, if we go for the first point, you have to make a list of the computers or machines that you interact with every day in your life. Then you have to make a list of inputs and outputs for 5 of the devices. And then you have to describe computer programs that you think are required for those machines to work. That is basically it. What we will be doing, we will be putting you in breakout rooms. So you could list these down and discuss about the lecture, see how to go forward about this activity, and we will obviously be checking up on you. Just let me know if you guys have a question about the lab activity right now.
I really don't understand the third question, computer program. So I know nothing about programming.
Yeah, I mean, so basically you have to describe the kind of programs you think those machines use to operate. It doesn't have to be very technical. For example, if I'm talking about like I go back to the calculator example, you think about what kind of program it is required for that to work. Essentially, it's just that it doesn't have to be very technical, but you try to describe the kind of program that makes the operation happen. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, all I know is Windows and Android. If that is a program.
Yeah, so you just have to describe how the program might work for that particular machine. It doesn't have to be very technical.
Yeah, I'm just gonna I guess also another example, just to add to yours, Tasneem. Let's say another example that you gave during the lecture was a coffee maker, right? So an example for the lab activity for if you choose coffee maker as the device, please choose a different one because we want you guys to think through the process. But let's think about a coffee maker. When you use a coffee maker, and I guess it depends on the brand, there's different things that are required to make that coffee maker work. So some of the inputs to a coffee maker would be, for example, the setting. What size of a cup did you put there? When do you want to turn it on? So there has to be like an on and off kind of button or feature that would be an input as well. You would also, some of them detect water level and complain if you try to turn it on without having enough water. So those would be, for detecting water level, the coffee maker would need some kind of sensor. So that would be the input would be not the water, but the sensor that is telling the coffee maker that whether there's water or not. And then for the outputs for the coffee maker, well, there's sounds. It's when it starts, maybe it makes a little beep. When it's done with the coffee, it makes a little beep. So there's sounds as outputs. So to produce the sounds, it needs some kind of speaker. So then the output device for a coffee maker would be a speaker. Also, it needs to drip out the coffee in some way. So there is some kind of nozzle, some kind of output. I see someone's annotating on the screen there. So it needs, a device for allowing water to flow out. Now we don't really, I don't know if there's like a technical term for it, but you don't need to get too technical. Just recognize what kinds of outputs there are for that coffee maker. There's also lights, right? Lights are also a form of output. And then for the program that might be needed for a coffee maker, if you put in the coffee and you press, start. Well, at that point, the software within the coffee maker goes ahead and runs the the process. It has to say, based on the data that I'm getting from my sensor, I do have enough water. So given that I have enough water, what step do I need to take? I need to, let's say, start heating up the pot or the water so that it, becomes hot for the coffee. And then how does it find out that the water is hot enough? That's another piece to the program. There's probably a sensor that detects the heat of the water once it reaches, let's say, 100, or I'm not sure what the perfect coffee temperature is. But once it reaches that temperature, then the program says, oh, great, the temperature's, the right temperature, time to pour it on the coffee, or I guess drip it on the coffee if you have a drip coffee maker. And then that is a decision that needs to be made, or I suppose I need to look into if it's just based on steam or not. But you can imagine that is a feature as well. And then how does it know when it's done, right? You might have an entire pot of water, but you only need a cup of coffee. So how does it tell when it's poured out enough water? So there has to be some kind of sensor or some kind of way that it's keeping track of how much water it has dripped so that it doesn't overflow your cup. So these all together allow it to then say, okay, I've poured out enough coffee. The cup should be full based on the selection that the person has made in terms of the size of their cup. And given all of that, I think that the cup is full. So now I'm gonna play the completion tone or something so that the person knows it's done. So that's the kind of process we want you to think about for different devices that you interact with on a daily basis. Does that help?
Yes, a little bit. Thank you.
Sorry, just a quick question. So just to clarify, you want us to basically describe what is happening, but not necessarily like what kind of program is being used for it to work, because obviously we don't know the programs, but you just want us to kind of go through all the steps that that machine requires to go through in order to complete a task.
Exactly. So that's the program part, like the logic of how the machine would be performing that task is exactly it. So yeah, you don't need to get to like the nitty-gritty details of like the actual software in there. It's more like, what are the steps it needs? Because we, when we're interacting with the coffee machine, we kind of go, give me coffee. But to get to coffee, the machine has to go through a process. So that process that it needs to go through is the program that whoever built that coffee machine had implemented in there.
Yeah, it's essentially like from the lecture, if you remember, the part of programming, we were talking about the problem-solving situation. So you just have to kind of figure out the steps and just explain those. You don't have to get too technical.
Yeah,
It's just to understand.
and the key here is to provide what you think the coffee machine or the whatever machine that you interact with what are some of the things that you think it needs to do. You do not need to go Googling and like find out what it actually does. It's that thought process. We want to get you guys into the habit of thinking in the way the machine does, because it doesn't, the coffee doesn't magically appear. Just to start thinking that way, because that's going to be a really core component of the course in general. Putting yourself, I mean, it sounds weird, but putting yourself in the mind of the machine and asking the questions of, well, how does it know about this? Because it's a machine, right? So it needs some kind of way of knowing about the status of like the world in some way, like if there's enough water or if the temperature is hot. So just just the goal here is more so for the training the thought process and having you guys discuss that among yourselves, because you know, someone else might have thought about a feature that you did not think about. So that's the core component here. And I got a question here saying, do we write it on a file separately? Yes, so you will be writing it. Actually, I don't, I believe on Canvas you can put in direct text entry. So it's totally up to you how you want to document your answers. If you do have access to Canvas and you are able to, you know, select the assignment for today, the Monday assignment selection there, go on ahead and you can write your answer there directly, or you can write it out on a Word document. And again, we will be having a more in-depth tutorial on how to use Canvas within the next lecture. But for now, if you want to use a separate file, go on ahead. If you want to take notes by paper, that's fine too. You can always submit a picture of written notes. So take notes however you like. Focus on, you know, thinking through the process that the machine is going to have to think through when you try to ask it to perform a task, and discuss your thoughts with others in your group, just to see how others are thinking about how a machine thinks.
Yeah, that's basically it. Anyone have any questions?
No, you and your group do not have to have the same 5 devices. In fact, it would be better if you guys have different devices as well, so you can like ping pong off each other's, you know, ideas, provide ideas to other devices as well. So yeah, I think you know, spend some time like brainstorming activities you perform on a daily basis and machines you interact with, and then you would share that with the group.
We will be creating the break rooms at random, so you will be assigned to a group. So you won't have to locate your group right now.
Alrighty, so breakout rooms are going to be randomly assigned again. These are not permanent breakout rooms or permanent groups. They are groups so that you can, you know, meet fellow classmates. And how many people are we? Maybe 6.
I have a question here. So the for the daily activities, the computers, machines, so these machines involve are like home appliances as well, or like washing machine, laundry, or just the computing machines?
Yeah, so it would be preferable if you actually think about everyday machines, like, yeah, as you said, washing machine and dryer and dishwasher and things like that, because those are, you know, machines that we don't really think, I mean, I don't think on a daily basis that I'm interacting with the computer, you know. So it would, yeah, it would be best if you stick to like devices that you use that aren't necessarily cell phone computer, because we'll talk about, you know, cell phone computer later on, because these are devices that can run multiple programs. They're different from, you know, everyday appliances, which are pre-programmed to do like one specific task. Great question.
Thank you.
Okay, so breakout rooms are going to be opening. You should receive a pop-up that says, you know, you are being invited to enter a specific room. Again, please do, you know, participate in your group and have a really fun discussion. I think, you know, these are cool questions that we don't typically think about on a daily basis. So yeah, have fun. Rooms are opening. If you have any questions while in a room, just use the raise hand feature.